Good afternoon, everybody. It is Tuesday, it is 12 o'clock, and that can mean only one thing, that I am going live on LinkedIn with my 20 in 21 sessions. This week, I'm going to be talking to you all about how to build your very first form in HubSpot. And we're gonna dive straight in. So, as standard, we're going to start by assuming that you know how to log into your HubSpot portal. If you don't, then obviously let me know and I'll help you with that. But as we've mentioned many a times, the first thing that you see by default when you log into HubSpot is your dashboard. We're going to be looking at those dashboards in the next couple of weeks in the session. So hopefully you can join me for those and find that very useful. Dashboards are an amazingly powerful tool that give you some great insight and overview as to what's going on in your portal. Yeah, we'll save that for another time. So forms, really exciting. Forms are a massively important part of your website. They are obviously one of the top converting elements that we use to drive conversions. They're very trackable and they give us information on prospects and where they've come from and what is and isn't working, which will empower decisions that you make in your marketing forevermore. So very important, and we're going to go across and take a look. So let's firstly go and find out where they're stored. So they live under marketing. So if you click marketing at the top of your menu and come down to the bottom, you will see forms. So go ahead and click forms. And this is where you're going to start to see all of your forms that we build. Now, there obviously are none here in my portal. If you happen to have a portal that already has forms in, what you're going to see is a table that contains the form names. You can, in time, organize these in different manners. There's interesting two parts to forms within HubSpot. So we have default HubSpot forms, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. And we're going to create our first form in the portal. There are also ways to capture existing forms on your website, which we can see up here in the top left under the word forms as non-HubSpot forms. So if I click the little I to get the information, this is basically where, as it reads, it collects submissions and contacts from website forms that weren't created in HubSpot. You can kind of update these settings in your preferences to whether you do or do not wish to capture them. I am on the fence for this. I would suggest that if you're not going to have every single one of your forms living in HubSpot, then certainly have that turned on, because you're going to capture those forms that you might be unaware of. The only downside is that certain forms that may be a login form, which is a pain sometimes, a login form is going to be captured. And depending on your notification preferences, you could get bombarded with notifications that forms have been filled out when really it is somebody just logging into the site, which is a bit of a downside of, say, a WordPress login form that people capture quite often. So I would say capture them if you're not going to use all the HubSpot forms, but maybe just double check those preferences that we looked at previously, which can be found up in your underneath your name and notifications and preferences. Make sure that they're customized. And that you're not necessarily on every single form submission, because you could, as I have in the past when I've been in different portals, have a 1 hour meeting, walk out 57 unread messages, all of which are basically people logging into a site. Not very exciting. So we're going to go ahead and hit create a free form, top right hand side, big red button. So let's go and do that. And so the first thing we're going to be asked with is, what kind of form is it that we're looking for? Again, a massive amount of work is done here for you in HubSpot. So you can have an embedded form. So that is a form that we're going to create in HubSpot. We're going to take that code. We're going to go and stick that into the admin or code base of our website and effectively embed that form directly onto our site. You can have a standalone page. So that is effectively creating a one-page link to a form. Useful if you want to send that out to maybe some selected people. Maybe it's for a competition, maybe it's for a customer service feedback. There are endless opportunities to use that. Pop-up box, as it says, really, it's going to be a form that pops up in the center of your page. Maybe a newsletter sign up type thing, or receive 10% off of an order type box that you see. You can have a drop down banner. So that's a form that's going to drop down from the top of the screen. Again, that could be done over certainly when they arrive at a certain page, or if they've been on the site for a certain period of time. And then slide in left, slide in right. Again, these are forms that, as they say, they're going to slide in from the bottom left-hand or right-hand corner, depending on where you position it. Useful for, again, maybe newsletter sign up, special offer, maybe a feedback if you're doing that on your site at the time. I'm just going to go ahead and create an embedded form. This is probably the form that you will use the most. And so I want to talk you through that. So let's go ahead, select embedded form and click next in top right. And we get presented with our form builder. So as we know, this is a free tool from HubSpot. They're giving you lots and lots of amazing tools. The caveat being that they have their branding on there. If you can live with that and understand the benefits that you're gaining from the free portal, then perfect. If not, for a small fee, you can jump to the first paid ban, which is starter, and that's going to remove that branding for you. So we're going to start with a blank template. Again, HubSpot give you these templates of tried and tested forms, and you can simply, click on one of those and it's going to build you out that template. So we're going to go blank just so I can talk you through the different options. So I'm going to hit start. First thing to do is either go through the tour. I don't need to go through the tour, and I'm going to give you a tour, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that, but you can go through it. First thing that I do is give the form a name. So top, click on the pencil, give the form a name. So we're going to put demo form, or form from, in fact, 20 in 21. Okay. And that's going to automatically save. As you can see, it's automatically saved with the changes. The next thing you can do is, if there's different two elements. There is building the form and saving your changes within the HubSpot portal, which you can go ahead and do, and it's going to automatically save as we go. Then there is the publish changes. What that means is when you've made those changes and you're happy with them, you hit update or publish, and what that's going to do is generate all those changes into a piece of code that we're going to take and embed on our site. So we can happily work away and make as many changes as we want to this form. And if this form were live somewhere, it will have no effect on that form until we hit publish the changes. So let me get rid of this. So we've got no field selected. So firstly, the first thing to do is understand what properties are we looking to capture. So these are properties within the HubSpot contact form that when they're filled out, they're going to populate into that contact record. So pretty much by default, every form that you put on a website, you're going to want to capture somebody's email. So you simply click on email, as you saw I did there, and drag it over and drop it here. You'll see that it's got the star, which is indicating that this is a mandatory field. And if we want to, you can make it optional. I would suggest that 9 times out of 10, you want your email field to be mandatory in any field, because otherwise you're just asking to receive spam and people that aren't genuinely interested in giving you their details for a genuine conversion opportunity. We're only interested in that really in the digital marketing world, so we want real conversions. I would get their email address. So by default, it's optional. It's mandatory. You could make that optional. I would suggest you don't. Let's go ahead next and capture the first name and the surname. Now you'll see here, as I'm dragging it, it's giving me the indications of where I would like to place this form. So I can place this field above, and that's highlighted blue. I can put it to the left or to the right or underneath. Now, because this is going to be quite a wide form, if I only had one name there, I'm going to go ahead and place it in the right hand. And as you see, as I release that, it's automatically made my form 2 columns and popped in first name and last name here. It's telling me by there that these are already contact properties that I have in my portal, which is great news, which means that when someone fills that out, it's going to update those contact properties. So this is all good so far. So I think for this, I will just grab a telephone number and I'm going to pop that underneath their email. I'm going to make this optional. So this is just if somebody really wants to give me more information, I'll probably use that to kind of decipher how serious somebody is in the future. If they're willing to fill out every element that I'm asking them for, including optional fields, I'm going to give them and hazard a guess that they are much more engaged. So we've already reached the halfway point. Hopefully you're finding this useful. Please, as ever, fire questions in. I will have people that are able to get those questions to me. I can't multitask, I've discovered, so people message me those questions. But please, have any questions, fire them in. Alternatively, leave me a comment on the post and I'll get back to you, or send me a DM on LinkedIn. And please, guys, don't forget, these are all published onto YouTube following this live session. So go ahead and follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Chris has made the channel look amazing. It was being branded as the Avengers banner this morning in our morning meeting. So I'd love for you to go and have a look, check that out and give us a subscribe. So getting back to forms. I think for now, I'm just going to leave these as the fields. This is enough for demonstration purposes. We will now minimize this little menu, which you can see I'm clicking. If you can see it, there's a little arrow next to frequently used properties. I can minimize that. I can see the other elements that make up a form. So firstly, we'll open other elements, and we have two options here. We can add the captcha, which is protected by reCAPTCHA from Google, which just again stops the spam fields. It's going to, as you may or may have see, plenty of these forms use this facility. If you're logged in as a verified Google account, you will unlikely be presented it very often. If you are not, then Google's going to pop up a little reCAPTCHA and ask you a question such as, tell me where all the traffic lights are, tell me the motorbikes. This is just testing that you are the lovely humans that I know you to be. So again, personal choice. Do you think that this is going to put people? HubSpot's default spam controls, I have to say, are pretty decent. We don't get too many spam forms filled out across many of the sites that we monitor. So I'm going to leave that off because I'm just a fan of making people fill out forms as quick as they can. GDPR, if you need to, for whichever reasons that you are where this is being used, you can have a consent box. You can obviously edit that text if you've got some company-wide consent. You can change that box to consent just for communicating and for processing information, or there is a legitimate interest information here, which is a pretty safe statement to leave on. What you're saying here is, ultimately they are filling this form out, so you are taking it that with, legitimately interested in the products and services that you have to offer. My belief on this is that if the form is very specific to what you're asking them, then they are having to understand what they're filling out. So giving you that information is the consent required. Obviously, I'm no GDPR expert, so please check what you need to do for your own purposes and the type of site that you're working on. Make sure your privacy policy is up to date and covers everything that you're talking about in those forms. But perhaps have that turned on. That's not too bad on the bottom of your forms, so I would leave that running. The next thing along here is the contact properties. So this is loads of other fields that you have available to drag into your forms. I'll go into this in more in-depth look at some advanced form techniques because there's just too much to get into in the remaining few minutes of today's session. And then finally, there are potentially options for you to turn this into ticketing. So if you're using this as perhaps a customer service type form, what you can have HubSpot do is automatically create a service ticket and bring across some information. Again, something that we'll look at in another session because we're going to run out of time. And then what it's saying is if you don't see what you're looking for, you can create a new field. I will tick this box, create a new field, just to show you what this is. And this is where we're going to show you now all of the different options of properties. So if, for example, I wanted to create a date field, I can again grab date, drag that over here. And what it's now going to do is create a new property into my contact record. So if this is hypothetically going to be for a callback, this is selected We're going to add that into the contact field. It's a contact object, so we're going to hit next. And we're saying that it's a date picker type because that's what I picked from the drag and drop, and hit create. What that's done now is created the field. I'm going to make that required. And I'm going to edit the name of this actually because the label doesn't make any sense in a form. So please select a date that you would like a call back, or knack because I can't type. Call back, and there we go. So I'm pretty happy with my form, and what I'm now going to do is hit update, and this is the big tile button in the top right hand corner. What that's going to do is review the form, give me any feedback, and if there were an error or a warning, it would highlight it here. What this is telling me that there's no warnings to expect, that if this form is filled out, the expected outcome of this form will be to update the contact properties that I've selected and submit the form. So I'm going to hit publish. And it says your form has been published. Perfect. So you have two different things that you can do here. So you can either grab that code, and that's going to create like a sharing form, like a one pager that I can send people to from it. But what I'm interested in is the embed code. So the embed code you can grab here, you can highlight here and click copy, and you can now take that and drop it into any of your websites or web tools that you have that you're live on the internet for. And that's going to embed, and you now have a usable live pop-up embedded HubSpot form. So perfect, go ahead and do that. Now in the last couple of minutes, I'm just going to try and talk you through some of the extra features that you have. So the first tab that you may see a lot spotted along the top next to form is called follow-up. Now follow-up would allow you to create a kind of automated response to that form being filled out. So you can hit create follow-up email. It's going to take you through all of the form. Now in the free version, you only get one follow-up. So we should make this pretty generic and just put thank you, put, thank you for contacting us today. We will be in contact within 48 hours. Go ahead and save that, and that's it. What that means is that any successful submission, we're going to be able to send them a nice little email just saying thank you for contacting us, which is very good from a customer journey perspective. The next tab along the top is options. So as you can see, removing that HubSpot branding, that requires you taking the first jump to a Marketing Hub starter. But there we go, we're going to stick with free because it is amazing and you can still do a hell of a lot for free. So what should we do once a visitor has submitted a form? So we can either display a thank you message that's embedded into the form. So the form will disappear and that message will appear on screen. You could also redirect them to another page. Now, depending on your setup, redirecting to say a specific thank you page on your site may well help you with tracking those forms in, say, Google Analytics if you do that. So obviously HubSpot is going to track its submissions, but that gives you another option. You might have specific goals that you want to hit in Google Analytics, and you could do that by tracking a submission to a successful page. I'm going to leave just a displaying as a thank you message. Obviously, we've got follow-up options. So this is the action that can be taken after receiving a form. So we can either send notifications to people to say a form's been submitted, and it's going to choose who. So obviously I can say every time someone fills that form out, please email me to let me know. The form and error messaging, you can select obviously the language. We're going to stick with English. And then the options that you see below. So always create contact for new email address. So what this means is that if there is a HubSpot cookie been placed onto someone's site, and so they're known and they submit a different email address. So say they previously are in your CRM with a personal email address, and they now fill this out and submit a different email address, you can specify that it by default will create a brand new contact record. That means that you are going to obviously increase the number of contacts in your database, and later you can choose to merge contacts if you think they are the same person. That's a personal choice. If you don't, what it's going to do is just use the cookie information and update the existing record. So I have run out of time today for my 20 minutes. The last tab that I didn't get a chance to talk you through is style and preview. This is really about styling, colors, layout, the types of labels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to continue in next Tuesday session. I'm going to talk you through styling, and I'm going to show you how to actually place the form into a live website, and we're going to submit our first actual live submission and see what happens when it hits the CRM. So please join me next week where we will do those things, and in the meantime, take a stab at creating your very first form, and if you get stuck or have any questions, you know where to find me. As ever, it's been my pleasure, and I would love for you to connect with me here on LinkedIn or subscribe on YouTube. I'll see you next week.